Hi, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I am Debbie Cox Bolton, CEO of the New Deal. Really excited to be with you today and to bring you what I've really been looking forward to, which is a great conversation with four New Deal leaders who are leading in their legislatures across the country as we turn the page here into 2026 and legislative sessions get underway. Even for some of our guests today actually get underway. We love to do this every year of just bringing people together to just talk a little bit about what they're expecting to see in their legislatures. We've got a couple people from majorities, a couple people from minorities, so we'll be, of course, different in every state. But I assume, and I am excited to hear about, some of the themes that our leaders are seeing across the country, what they're hearing from their constituents, and how they think what they're going to be focusing on as leaders in their caucuses, and what they're anticipating happening in their state legislatures this session. So I will just say that New Deal for this year, as we think about the policy priorities that we'll be working on, we are going to stay really focused on affordability issues. We know that that is top of mind for people across the country in every state. We were very happy to do a lot of work last year, as many of you know, on the housing, cost of housing issue, culminating in a lot of great ideas from across the country in terms of how to bring down costs of housing, how to increase supply. And we will certainly be continuing to talk about that, but we'll also be adding to that conversation work on how we bring down the cost of taking care of our families, and that's everything from healthcare to childcare to caring for aging parents as well. So that'll be a big focus of ours this year, as will energy costs. And of course, as we head into an election year here, democracy and the administering of our elections in 2026. So with that little introduction, again, thank you for being with us. I want to introduce the four leaders who were very gracious to join us today from their state capitals in alphabetical order. We've got Oregon House Majority Leader Ben Bowman. We have Florida House Minority Leader Fentrice Driscoll. I believe that if he's not here yet, he will be here shortly with some Zoom issues. We've got New Jersey Senate Majority Whip Vin Gopal. And we've got Kansas House Minority Leader Brandon Woodard. So thank you to the four of you for being here, and really excited to hear what you have to say this morning. I think I want to just start with a question. In my lead up, I talked a little bit about the affordability issues. I know that from talking to many of you over the course of the last months, this is something you're all very focused on in your own states. So Ben, let me start with you and just tell us a little bit about when you're thinking about how to bring down the cost of living in Oregon. What is your caucus going to be focused on this year?
Yeah, great question. I think the right answer on affordability is an all of the above approach. We need to be looking across sectors and lowering costs in every way that we can. In Oregon, our session this year is a short session. It is only 5 weeks long. So the legislators on this call will empathize with how hard it will be to pass big bills in a short session, but we're certainly going to try. Building on what we did last session, which was sort of crack down on big data centers and make sure they're paying their fair share. We outlawed surprise billing for online purchases. We sort of went after corporate profiteering in healthcare. In the session coming up, we've got a few proposals. One is about predatory lending. I know other states have led on this work, but we've got out-of-state lenders who are getting vulnerable people locked into 78% or 200% interest rates on loans. So that is one place where we think we can have a big impact for consumers right away. We've got a piece of legislation that would restrict private equity from purchasing single-family homes for 3 months so that first-time homebuyers have a real shot in a difficult market to purchase a home. And then we're going to be going after economic development. This is something, there's a big opportunity in Oregon. A great way to make the state more affordable is to help people earn more money, create more jobs. And part of that work is helping government get out of its own way. As someone who believes in the power of government, I'm channeling someone who I admire here, Jen Pahlka. We need to make it easier for government to function, to achieve its own goals. So we're going to have a wide suite of proposals, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get some good things done for Oregonians.
Great. Thank you so much. And I should have shared at the beginning, I'm sorry, that we will be, I'm going to be asking some questions, and then we're going to be taking some questions from you all. So as we get going here and start hearing from the leaders, please feel free to add your questions to the chat, and we will get to those toward the end of the session. So with that, Leader Driscoll, I know that affordability has been top of mind for you, and you've even packaged some things up together, thinking about the messaging around this. Tell us how you're seeing the caucus this year address these issues.
Thank you, Debbie. And Really appreciate you putting this together. Happy New Year, all. So, coming from Florida, I'll tell you that we believe that every Floridian deserves the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe, and that certainly includes the ability to lead your life. So, what we are focused on is an affordability agenda, and the House and Senate Democrats have come together to work on this. In Florida, we're seeing some unprecedented infighting with our Republican colleagues. The Speaker of the House and the Senate President are at odds. The governor's in the middle. But while the Republicans who are in leadership are focused on their infighting, the Democrats are focused on delivering real results for people with our affordability agenda. So, our ideas would lower costs, put money back in the pockets of working families and seniors who need it most, and also try to grow Florida for the future. So, the first idea is a national insurance compact. This would lower the cost of homeowners insurance by teaming up with other states to spread the risk from hurricane claims. Florida, for example, has now seen four major hurricanes in 4 years. We know that these storms are getting stronger, and we need to be prepared for future crises. So it's time that we use our collective power to lower rates and stop the insurance companies from taking advantage of our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones, our constituents. The second is that we're proposing something called the Home Act, which stands for Housing Options Made for Everyone. This would make sure that affordable housing stays affordable and eliminates the dock stamp tax for certain first-time home buyers so that we can help us, especially our young people who graduate from college and who might want to stay in the state, but it's very difficult for them to find an affordable place to live or attain the American dream of home ownership. And the third bill is we want to refocus Florida's government, ending wasteful spending and corruption and expensive sweetheart deals that we've seen the governor cut with many of his donors. Florida's tax dollars belong to Floridians, and they don't want to see them wasted. So there are things like you have made at national news, like Alligator Alcatraz. There's been a Hope Florida scandal, which was a nonprofit run by the governor's first lady. There's all kinds of things that unfortunately have been happening in Florida that have wasted our taxpayer dollars. And I think our constituents want this to stop. So all of these ideas are just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more we could do. And we just want to see Florida be a place where families can thrive. And all of that starts with affordability.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Leader Woodard, let me go to you in Kansas.
Awesome. Well, I don't think this will surprise anyone. We announced our legislative agenda yesterday called the Affordability Plan for Now. So we are focused on many of the issues you've heard our friends from Oregon and Florida talk about as well. Some of the other pieces that we're looking at is reinstating a renter relief program that actually went away during our former Governor Brownback's tax experiment that failed miserably. So putting that back on the table where renters can get a rebate for a part of what they're paying in their rent. Obviously, we're addressing property taxes in Kansas as well. And looking at things like eliminating the copay for free and reduced lunch. It only costs us about $3.5 million to get rid of that copay for folks across the entire state of Kansas, which would actually give more relief to working families in Kansas than any of the Republican tax bills have this year. I love hearing about Oregon working on predatory lending as well. The Kansas Catholic Conference, which has a lot of authority in this building, has put that on their legislative agenda as well. So I think with them as an unlikely ally for us, we'll be able to get some really good work done there. And continuing to make sure that healthcare is affordable. Kansas is one of the few states that has still not expanded Medicaid. We have Republicans pushing solutions that will look at things like addressing uncompensated care for our hospitals and investing in rural hospitals. Yet when they start adding up all the prices of what they're looking to do, it costs more than it would to just expand Medicaid to 150,000 Kansans. We're looking at sick leave policies and leave for parental leave as well. So the other two stole some of the thunder, but we're working on those same issues, and it's all affordability, affordability, affordability in Kansas.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leader. Leader Gopal, let me come to you. Of course, New Jersey is a unique state in the sense that they just did their elections and have a new governor. So a very different scenario than a lot of our other leaders are working on in an election year. But Senator, do you want to talk a little bit about your agenda around affordability?
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize for being off camera. We have the governor's final state of the state address in a few minutes, and everyone is kind of running around a little bit. Similar to my other colleagues in other states, affordability is the top issue. I think battling some of the corporate interests like pharmacy benefit managers, which we're seeing across the country, looking at how to rein in utility rates with some of the utility companies and their monopolies, as well as just trying to how to make health insurance more affordable. We have seen over the last several years, I think Democrats have been successful at a wide array of levels when they focus on how to stand up for working class families against corporations. And I think we've seen that at all spectrums. So I think with our incoming governor, Governor Mikey Sherrill, who just got elected in quite a landslide in what was a little bit of a, I think, surprise for folks because President Trump only lost the state by a couple points, and former Governor Murphy narrowly won his reelection by 2 points last time. Governor-elect Sherrill won by almost 16 points, and a big issue was that what was affordability. New Jersey also has a unique amount of government: 600 individual school districts, 565 municipalities, thousands of independent government agencies that all have its own layers of bureaucracy. And one thing that Governor-elect Sherrill has campaigned very hard on is cutting that bureaucracy, mandating consolidation of government services, which is something you wouldn't normally hear from Democrats talking about, but that is something we've tried to lead here in New Jersey, and we're hopeful in 2026 we can do a lot of these things to try to make New Jersey more affordable.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You mentioned a little bit about kind of the incoming governor and your dynamics. Of course, it is an election year for most states, and I'm sure that is going to have an impact on the politics and how optimistic you all are that you can get things done. I'm just curious kind of about the that landscape, the backdrop by which you're going to need to operate. And of course, again, it'll probably depend on whether you're in a minority or a majority, but maybe just talk a little bit about those dynamics at play and how optimistic you are about getting some of the things done, or what you're worried about coming down from the other side. Let me start again in Oregon with Ben.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic we're going to get some things done in Oregon. I have the good privilege of Oregon being a state with Democratic majorities in both chambers and a Democratic governor. So I feel optimistic we will be able to deliver some big wins. What I will say is heading into an election season, I think it's really important that voters understand that one of the driving forces of our affordability crisis is Republican policies at the federal level, led by President Trump. The decisions that they have made over the last year have put states like Oregon in a horrible position. We are looking at a $15 billion loss in federal funding over the next 3 bienniums. They're forcing us to make cuts to healthcare, to food assistance, to other programs that people in my state rely on. And I think we need to make sure people can connect the dots on this. What does it mean to cut billions of dollars from healthcare funding? It means more people are going to go to the emergency room without insurance, and then your rates of insurance are going to go up. So I think it's important to operate on 2 levels here. 1, do everything we can in our state to drive down the cost of living. And 2, remind people that the reason they're feeling the pinch is largely because of decisions made by Republican actors at the federal level. And we have to be the leaders who do everything we can to support the folks in our state.
Thanks, Leader Bowman. Fentress, you want to take that on?
Yes, so I think this actually presents a real opportunity for Democrats in the state of Florida. We're deeply in the minority in both the House and the Senate. However, what I'm finding is that affordability is so top of mind that people in our communities are very interested in leaders who will stand up for that issue. And I think folks are pretty savvy because they're starting to realize who stands up for that issue and who just talks about it. You know, we hear everywhere we go from folks who may have voted for Donald Trump. This is not what I asked for. This is not what I bargained for. My groceries are not cheaper. You know, things are going too far on immigration. Whatever the issue is that is not actually improving their day-to-day quality of life, I think that's a real opportunity for Democrats or just folks on the center left to talk about the issues that are resonating with the hearts and minds of Florida's families. And that is part of how we will, try to advance these policies. You know, the truth is we're in the minority, so I suffer no illusion that they're going to pass our big sweeping agenda and give us the credit for it. But here's the thing. I'll work with anybody who's willing to work with me. And it's okay if it doesn't have my name or a member of my caucus's name on it. We just need to get this done, and we can figure out how to sort out the credit later.
I love that. Senator Gopal, you want to take that on about again, you're in a little bit of a different situation. You've got a little bit of a mandate with some majorities and a governor that's going to work with you. But what are you looking forward to in terms of the that mandate you have going into the session?
Yeah, similar to Oregon, we do have a majority. We almost have a super majority. We actually have more seats now than we had since Watergate. We had Democrats elected this past November in seats where they were literally just put their name on the ballot. They're sitting at home and they're looking on TV and they're winning, and now they're members of the legislature. So I think the big difference here is that Governor-elect Sherrill really ran a very moderate campaign. She beat very, very liberal opponents. She talked about affordability every step of the campaign. Her opponent focused mostly on sanctuary states. She focused, even when she talked about Trump, she talked about it in the context of tariffs, in the context of affordability, less about, immigration, January 6th, these other issues, which I agree have really gone too far, and that's starting to move some people. But to the fundamental question, is Donald Trump making your state more affordable, your country more affordable? The answer is, I think most rational, normal people would say no. And I think we all collectively, as leaders in our states, have a unique opportunity to show how our party is going to fight for making things more affordable. And that will mean taking on some of these corporations that have polluted both parties for a long time. And that's going to be a big challenge. We have to make housing more affordable, healthcare more affordable, college more affordable. And if Democrats are not successful on focusing on these issues and leading on these issues, then we're going to just basically give it right back to the Republicans. So I think that's going to be our challenge for 2026.
Thank you, Senator. Different situation with your legislature, Leader Woodard, in terms of the mandate you might have. But tell us about how the politics and elections might be impacting you this year.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting situation with a Democratic governor and a Republican supermajority. And so we're working tirelessly to make sure that in November that supermajority is shattered. But we're really excited because, we traveled the state. We went to 14 different communities across Kansas this last year, specifically to places that we don't represent, to hear from them. Just yesterday, after announcing our press conference and our legislative agenda, there were a couple of Republicans who made remarks, side comments about how they're like, oh, here go the Democrats again with their affordability talking points. And I was able to push back and say, no, this is what your constituents in your district told us that they care about. And so we're going to continue working that while we continue pushing for affordability and cost of living and housing access, the number one bill that the Republicans are working on this just already introduced yesterday. It's getting a hearing today, and it'll be on the floor this week. Is their number one issue is banning trans Kansans from being able to get driver's licenses, while we're focused on making sure that people have access to homes, healthcare, and education. And so we're going to continue hitting that point. While we are in the super minority, we do have a really good working relationship with the speaker. So I know that there are a couple of those issues that our bills aren't going to see the light of day, but they become floor amendments on the Republican plan. Many of the Republicans who are out of touch with their leadership, that are in leadership, don't know that many of their Republican colleagues really like our agenda, and so do Kansans. So we're going to continue pushing for that through the end of session. And if they're not able to work with us to get some of these done, we will hold them accountable in the elections in November.
That's great. I want to switch for a second. Policy is so important, but in today's world, right, communicating our message is equally as important. And you all touched on this a little bit. Brandon, you were just talking about the road trip you did around Kansas, and but I would love to just hear from all of you about kind of how do you think about communicating effectively in this day and age as leaders? How do you kind of make that case, as you said, Ben, to connect the dots between the policy that you're working on and how it's going to affect your people, and just even how do you break through in this really complicated media environment? In case you have tips for other folks. Maybe I'll go backwards this time. Do you want to take that one, Brandon?
Sure. As we told the caucus, and actually our 14 stops across the state, our members, all 37 members, participated in one of those. They were not allowed to go unless they went through our message training and our communications consultants to talk about affordability. As we explained to them in our retreat on Sunday before we started session, if we're explaining, we are losing. We can all talk about why we oppose vouchers and directing public dollars to private schools all day long. But at the end of the day, we've got to start with what's the bumper sticker. We had one of our members who was 10 or 15 minutes into explaining the intricacies and the weeds of vouchers in Kansas. And I said, let's stop. What do you want the headline to be? Because what we know in Western and Central Kansas is that without their public school, without Friday Night Lights, they don't have much of a community. And that's the heart of their community. They love that. And so when we say they want to defund your kid's football team, Kansas voters start listening. If we talk to them for 15 minutes about why vouchers are bad, we've already lost the argument.
Great, thank you. Senator Gopal?
Yeah, communicating now, as we know, it continues to change in every way. Obviously, methods, we're investing more in social media, using the internet more than we do print now. Obviously, a lot of these not overly expensive but well done videos by elected officials are doing well. I think a lot of people are following, I'm sure, the mayor of New York City's social media, regardless of agree or disagree with his policies. His way of communicating, I think, has been very effective. I think a lot of officials are trying to follow that, how to explain things in a short, brief time. We accomplished yesterday in New Jersey, for the first time in 30 years, significant charter school reform, and we did that with having the charter schools and the public schools united in support of the bill, doing it together. So it's something we're going to try to push out, communicate to show this is what Democrats are doing. They're making sure government does work, bringing opposing sides together, and I think that's just a contrast from the noise you see in Washington and the noise you see in Republican Party politics, mostly because of the leader of their party.
Yeah, thank you for that. Leader Driscoll.
One of the most important things is making sure that we're all singing from the same hymnal. And so this is the first time in recent memory that the House and Senate Democrats are doing just that. We have the same platform, and we have equipped our members to co-sponsor each and every one of these bills and to talk about them like they are their own, and to talk about them in their communities. I think through town halls, through social media, yes, through bumper stickers and being, very short and concise with the message, but then also in some of those events where you can have longer format conversations, taking the time to do that, I find that it can really make a difference. In a state of 23 million people, we can't do that with everyone. So that's what the social media and the shorter format, opportunities are for. But when it comes to really, talking to our neighbors at town halls, knocking doors, we even have walk cards with our affordability agenda, so our members can take it out to their communities. I think it is very helpful. And there's such a contrast because with the infighting that we're seeing with Republican leadership, they're not presenting any big ideas. I mean, their two biggest things that they're focused on is redistricting, which is in service to Donald Trump to try to keep a Republican majority in the midterms. And then also trying to eliminate property taxes in Florida, which is an awful idea because we know that pays for law enforcement in our public schools and public services and the like. So I think we're doing a much better job of getting out our message than we have done maybe ever before.
That's right. And I love that both you and Leader Woodard have packaged this up literally as an affordability agenda. I think that also is so helpful to kind of tie it all together. And I love that you're doing that. Leader Bowman.
No, I totally agree with that. I think I really love Leader Woodard's tour roadshow idea. I think has taken off in some other states and a lot of other people do. I think it's a great idea. The only thing I'll add to the channels discussion is I've been doing a lot of podcasts lately, trying to meet people where they're at, which is not always old school local news or the newspaper. And maybe the last thing I'll say on this is I totally agree with my colleagues. Like we want to be disciplined about what we're talking about, but I don't think we don't want to sound like ChatGPT robot politicians when we talk about it. So I think people finding their own voice and being able to communicate in a way that's real for them and personal is also really helpful to break through. I think people are tuning out politicians who sound like politicians. I think that's part of what Mamdani's success in New York has been. So that's just something I've been thinking about as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important point. It's got to be authentic and to each person. Are there any places where you see some bipartisan daylight where is there any issue that's going to be coming through your legislature where you feel like there's a real bipartisan opportunity to get something done? And maybe I'll start with you, Leader Driscoll, this time. put you on the spot. Sorry.
Thank you. That's okay. I was just thinking, ooh, don't come to me because I don't
Okay.
know. Because what's so challenging, right, is that we can't even get our colleagues in the same party to necessarily agree on things.
Yeah.
You know, having
Yeah.
said that, I would say close to 90% of the bills that we pass in Florida do pass in a unanimous fashion. So hopefully there'll be some good things we can do on the environment, for example. From time to time, we see good reform and the criminal justice silo. That's an area where we work together really well. I know that we're talking about artificial intelligence bills and what to do with the data centers. So I hope that that could be an opportunity for some bipartisan cooperation. So yes, there will be opportunities for that, you know, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we'll be on the floor for our first floor session where we'll be considering bill ideas. And one of the bills that they're moving forward with this week would lower the purchase of firearms of long arm guns from 21 to 18. And so we just see them focusing on all the wrong issues. Nobody asked for that. In fact, we had so many families after the what happened in Parkland in 2018 ask for the purchase age to be raised, and that's what the legislature did. Now we're going back on that promise and just completely failing on affordability. So we have to continue to force the affordability issue and hope that they'll eventually listen.
Yeah, well, you know that you're on you're on the right path, right? That's all you can do. Thank you. Senator Gopal.
Yeah, unfortunately, I share my colleagues' thoughts. I'm not seeing a lot, and I think that's why the Republicans who were generally moderate had landslide losses in New Jersey this past November because they're not able to focus on that. They can't even say that you know parents shouldn't be ripped away in front of their kids picking them up from school. Like they're unable to even take a position on that. And I think their overall concern of just a Republican primary. You know, I'd like to think that a majority of primary voters are not have this lack of empathy and are not this MAGA and this partisan. We're not seeing that. But that's my hope, and I hope I want the Republicans to return to the era of George Bush and John McCain and Mitt Romney and people that we strongly disagreed with. But at least we understood that they had some core beliefs as it related to the Constitution, freedom of elections, and things like that. So I think that's a challenge right now in our country, and unfortunately for the Republican Party, they whisper things to us privately, and then my colleagues will go and just do and say crazy things. That's not great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, in my state, I think Congress sort of warps people's worldview of politics. In my state, over 90% of the bills we passed last session were bipartisan, where at least some Republicans and some Democrats voted for them. So there will be a ton of things that we work together with the Republicans on. My default position is I want to be collaborative and work with willing partners on the other side. One place that I'm super interested in and see a potential opportunity, I think it was the senator who mentioned corporate profiteering, and I think there's a little movement on the Republican side on this issue, trying to protect consumers. President Trump just came out with a similar statement to the legislation that I'm pursuing in Oregon about trying to get PE out of the business of buying up these single family homes. The problem with President Trump is, of course, he says a lot of things and then seems to only follow through with the worst things. But to the extent that there is a bipartisan alignment there, I'd love to work with Republicans on lowering costs. But that's a decision that they're going to have to make. Their party is sort of in this transformation where the previous principles don't seem to apply, and really it's just following the whims of the current leader. So it makes it hard, I think, for them as politicians to navigate a base that is very different than their base from 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You've all in various ways mentioned the administration and Trump. And I mean, obviously last year, I think, we knew what Trump 1.0 was. I think we had, we didn't know what was coming last year of just the craziness and pulling federal funds back, canceling grants that had already been, authorized by Congress. I mean, all of the things. I guess I'm just kind of curious about, how do you brace yourself? Like, what do you do to deal with the fact that there's going to be unknowns that you can't even plan for, right? I'm just kind of curious about how you think as a leader about what might be coming down the pike that you can't even anticipate yet. And I'll let anybody that has an answer jump in on that.
Yeah, I'll kick it off because Leader Driscoll went first last time. I think it's an impossibly hard part of our jobs right now as state legislators who obviously are dealing with the impacts of decisions made in my state thousands of miles away from where I am. I think really important for leaders in this moment is to take a beat. There's so much happening at the federal level. There's so much controversy and chaos and bad outcomes and bad decisions. And I think we have to be disciplined and strategic about how we respond. There's a temptation, I think, for us to send out a press release every time something stupid happens at the federal level or something harmful happens at the federal level. And I think we need to be careful about that because we have a governance responsibility in our states, but we also have this responsibility to our voters to protect American democracy, which unfortunately, I think a year ago I said something along the lines of we can't let President Trump distract us. And it's starting to feel a lot more existential than that to me, just to be really honest. Things are getting a lot worse. And so we have to balance both of our responsibilities, governing our states, but also standing up for the foundational principles of this country that are constantly under attack.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to even know where to begin, to be honest with you. Like you said, you just don't know what you're going to have to respond to in any given day. Yeah, leader school.
Yeah, I loved that response and would only add a couple thoughts. The first is that I think that the job of a leader is to help the people who you are leading make sense of the world around them and the choices and opportunities that we have in the midst of that chaos. And so we have to be nimble, we have to be flexible, we have to have really good relationships with our partners on the ground, with the nonprofits, with other agencies and entities that can help care for people in the time where government may be tying its own hands and not being as responsible and responsive and as helpful as it can. And then I guess I would just suggest that, I feel like in chaos sometimes there can be opportunity because in chaos, if we as the Democratic caucus, as the center left caucuses, can maintain a steady drumbeat, if we can have some stability and leave a light on for people and offer them a pathway to come towards some more reasonable policies that will actually improve their quality of life, maybe we could have some better opportunities in 2026.
Yeah, I love that, leaving light on for people. I love that. I love that idea.
I think, this is a little bit of a political answer in the sense that we always hear the most important election of our lifetime. I think November 2026 is going to be the most important election of our lifetime. And what happens there is going to impact in a larger way. I think when 24 happened, I didn't think it could be this bad. Because 2016 to 2020 wasn't this bad. This is insane. And we got folks on some of the tariffs, they're paying 50, 60%. Just take the economic piece out. But as my colleague said on the democracy piece. So I think a lot of this year, at least for us in New Jersey, is looking at a vote for a Republican speaker is a vote to continue a lot of this. And I think that's what we're going to be focused and to hope there can be some checks and balances and understanding that President Trump has said that he's going to try to rig elections. He's going to do whatever it takes. So not just with the redistricting, but even the election results in November. This is a really scary time, and I don't think it's clicking. And I think what's most concerning for me is how many of my friends and people that I know and constituents and just folks I come across every day, make excuses for what we're seeing. And I don't think any of this is healthy or normal. So I think that's going to be the biggest push this year is just making sure we, regardless of how we feel about different Democrats, is to make sure that there's a check on this very dangerous thing that's happening right now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that it's really well said. Thank you for being here. I understand you have to get to the state of the state and really appreciate, I should mention that Senator Gopal was one of the campaign co-chairs for the new governor. So congratulations to you and the whole team there. We were so excited about that. So let's do this. I know we're kind of getting toward the end. I'd love to take one question from the chat that I'll pose to both of you, and then maybe I'll do a lightning round to finish it up here. So the question in the chat was about which pieces of the affordability agenda are you hearing most about from your constituents? Like when you're out there, I'm kind of paraphrasing Jessica, I hope that's okay. But Jessica, this question from Jessica Post. Which pieces or what's where's the connection point in folks' lives that they're the most worried about when you're talking to people, I guess.
In Oregon, the biggest ones that I hear from constituents are housing and healthcare. Those are the biggest ones on the housing front. Like, I'm a millennial, people my generation and below, it's a tough world out there to try to buy your first house. The cost is just out of control. And so there's a lot of things we have to do about that problem. I think a big portion of it in Oregon is trying to figure out how to build more housing supply. But then we talked about some of the other things, which is like, let's make sure that the people buying these houses are actually using them so people can live in them, whether they're renting them out or whether it's a first time home buyer. I think that's really big on housing. And then on the healthcare front, I assume this is happening in other states, but the cost of healthcare is escalating so rapidly. It's not just a problem for real people. It's also a problem for our businesses who have, exorbitant expenses trying to cover healthcare for their employees. So there's a lot of things that we are doing in Oregon to try to get healthcare costs under control. But I have to point out that the federal decisions are making that a lot harder and are going to raise prices for people in my state and across the country.
Can you just maybe point to one? I'm just curious because we're hearing this all over the country. Can you just point to maybe, and it is such a federal issue, maybe one example of what you think what states can do on the healthcare front that might be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, the bill that I'm most excited about that we passed last session, this took me 3 years to pass, was a bill. It's called the Corporate Practice of Medicine Doctrine. Other states are starting to pick up on this. I just spoke to the American Medical Association about this. But basically, the idea behind this bill is we need to make sure that doctors are the ones making medical decisions that impact patients. There is a relentless trend in this country where private equity firms and large corporations are coming in, purchasing the medical clinics, and then turning the levers in small ways that decrease the amount of time doctors spend with patients, stop providing services that aren't profitable, lay off some of the nurses, stop seeing Medicaid patients, all sorts of decisions that are really good for their bottom line, but really terrible for access and for patient outcomes. So I think that's one thing that states across the country should be looking at as part of a robust approach to driving down healthcare costs.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great flag. Really appreciate that, Leader Driscoll. Thoughts on which affordability pieces are your most resonating or most of concern of your constituents or those of your members?
Yes, in this order, it's property insurance. Property insurance rates are very high in Florida. In fact, we have some of the highest premiums, if not the highest premiums in the state. And because we are prone to natural disasters like catastrophic hurricanes, these rates continue to increase. And the only solutions that we've seen from our colleagues across the aisle included a $3 billion bailout of the insurance industry, but no relief for homeowners back in 2023. So people have been feeling this pain for quite some time. The second is just a general lack of affordable housing, whether it's a home that somebody wants to buy or whether it's just something that they want to rent. Everything is just really expensive right now. And then the third is healthcare. And what we could do, what we should have done years ago was expand access to Medicaid. It would help nearly 800,000 Floridians get access to healthcare coverage. So we are in an affordability crisis, really, honestly, of the majority's own making. And so now we have to do what we can to claw our way out of it.
Do a follow-up to you, to Leader Driscoll, just about the chances of your sense of the election in Florida this year and whether or not you think that Democrats can pick up seats in your state, or how optimistic are you?
Yeah, I do think there's an opportunity to pick up some seats because the winds are shifting. I think 2026 is a change environment. It feels akin to 2018 in Florida when we picked up 7 seats in the Florida House. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be enough to break the supermajority as it stands right now. But anything that we can do, any movement to getting closer would be welcomed both in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to add anything, Leader Bowman, about Oregon elections in November?
I mean, a lot can change between now and the election, but I think the chaos in Washington is driving the day right now in Oregon. Like the level of, I don't know if folks saw this, but there's a shooting in Oregon from federal agents. There's a lot of details that still need to come out about that, but there's this sense in Oregon that these federal actions are impacting our day-to-day lives, from immigration to the cuts to healthcare to the cuts to food assistance to the constant headlines about what we're doing internationally. Are we going to invade Greenland and invade a NATO ally? Like all this stuff is I think people are getting sick and tired of the chaos impacting their lives negatively. So I feel optimistic. We are going to be disciplined and focus on our affordability agenda because that's what our wheelhouse is in this state. But to be honest, I think voters are just sick of the nonsense from Washington in my state.
Great. Let me end with a question. Just maybe in a word or two, what you're most concerned about or watching the most closely, and what you're most hopeful about in your this session. Go ahead. I'll start with you again. Stay in Oregon for a minute. Ben, what do you think?
I mean, I love my state. I love Oregon. I think we are a great place to live. And I think we have a real opportunity in the short session to make us even a little bit better. So I'm optimistic. I have so much admiration to Leader Driscoll, Leader Woodard, people who are leading the Democratic Party in states where right now they're not in power, but I totally believe that those tides are going to change. And I'm optimistic about that too. What I worry about, I mean, I kind of alluded to this earlier. I worry about what the next thing is going to be from the Trump administration, and are there going to be further cuts to the revenue that we need to provide for the people in my state? Is there going to be an international crisis that is going to destabilize the global economy, which unfortunately feels more realistic now than it did a year ago? So those are the kind of things that are keeping me up at night.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I will echo your heartfelt love and gratitude to Leader Driscoll and other leaders that are leading in hard states and doing such an amazing job. But Leader Driscoll, what are your thoughts, closing thoughts here?
Yes, what I'm most worried about are Republican proposals to drastically reduce or eliminate property taxes in our state. Florida doesn't have a state income tax, so we depend a great deal on sales tax and property tax to get us through. Property taxes, like I mentioned earlier, fund law enforcement and our schools and things like, making sure the garbage gets picked up and the roads get repaired. And at a time where it seems like we can count less and less on the federal government and sometimes not really on the state government, we need our locals to be able to provide resources and services to the people. And so that worries me as we're in this time of chaos. I want to make sure that our local governments have what they need. And so we should not move forward with those proposals. And then what I'm hopeful about, last weekend, my team and I were out knocking doors, and the energy at this point in an election year is amazing. I mean, the people are ready for some positive change. And so politics is vibes, it's all vibes. And the vibe right now, I feel like it's very much with us on the center left. And I hope that continues through to November.
You actually literally gave me chills on that one. I'm with you. I think this is we got to do it. Amazing. Well, I can't thank you both and your colleagues who were able to join us for a little while for doing this, particularly on days when you're just starting the session. Representative Driscoll's just first day today, but we will be watching what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. New Deal will always be here to help you and have your back in any way we can, and to help continue to these conversations where we can bring people together to learn from each other and see what's happening across the country. So thanks everyone for taking the time this morning, and as we get these legislative sessions underway, and Happy New Year, and hope to see you all very soon.
Thanks all. And thank you, Debbie. Proud to be a New Dealer.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See y'all.